Thank you, everyone, for joining us for a conversation about attracting API talent. I'm delighted today to be able to have Jackie back on the stage. If you haven't already met her, she is senior leader at the DWP and has been doing some amazing stuff in her organization to encourage and motivate greater talent. Delighted to have Brian Hanrahan here, who's CEO at Nupe. Fantastic to have you join us as well, representing our fintech worlds. We've got big leadership fintech. And Gabriela Brandt-Alves, representing the kind of talent that I think many people are fighting for. Gabriela is an API product manager and an active member of the Women in APIs community who are bringing this event to you today, this activity. I'm sure any of these phrases will be the sorts of things that you see, read about consistently. There is just a mass of board level, executive level, team level conversation going on about how to attract more people, more diversity. And if you start digging into the kind of conversations that people are having around the Gen Z millennial community in particular, it is kind of exacerbating a lot of the issues that people are seeing about how to attract people. So the things that are really important are about values, about being in a place where people feel included, and this is becoming very real in the kinds of decisions that people are making. We just want to share with you, this is a really early release, a bit of a draft set of data that the Women in APIs community has been sponsoring. We've gone and looked at the external-facing perspective of API-related technology companies to basically look at how they are presenting themselves in the public domain. So very simply, we're going to the websites, the Company About Us page, looking at the LinkedIn profiles of those people, and organizing those groups by, you can see the pie chart on the top left, the type of function that those leaders are looking after. So they're in, they're co-founders, they're CEOs, they're customer-facing, sales, customer success, they're in product, they're technical engineering, or they're in finance marketing. Support includes people and culture, legal, risk, those sorts of things. And for the people that either clearly identify or could be implied as identifying as female versus male, you could argue that for the tech industry at a 25-75 split, yes, we know there's still a long way to go, but probably a lot better than some of the stats we've seen in recent years. The challenge is addressing the breakdown of that. You can read the data for yourself, but it is quite evident that the leadership, customer-facing, product, engineering, the roles that are typically the ones that are driving and looking at a lot of the success for the organizations are disproportionately underrepresented in their people that appear to identify as female. So just want to leave that as a problem space, but talk about actually solutions and some good things that people are doing. I might ask Gabriela first. You're somebody who does your research. You've changed roles a bit. Tell us about, does this resonate for you and your peer group and your friends and colleagues?
Yeah, for sure. So at least when I'm looking, for example, for a new career challenge or something like that, I definitely will try to research and see how is the diversity, how is the impact that the company is trying to make in society, how they advertise that. I try to look all the public information that I can get, and I also, for example, during an interview process, I try to dig deep and ask recruiters or the members throughout the interview process. So, for example, I was telling Claire that there was an interview process that was for a big organization, 1,000+ employees, and there was a 7-interview process, 7 interviews, right? And they disclosed all the names of the people that I would be talking to, and there was no female at all. And they were all about, I'm a product manager, right? So all about products, my peers, leaderships. And then I was like, okay, no female at all within 7 people. For me, was a red flag, and I decided to drop off the process. So for me, I try to look, for example, at social media. So there was some companies that I was looking into, and on a kind of an office party, I looked at the picture, all like white male. I was like, where is the woman around that picture? So it starts ringing up some bells, like, okay, I need to dig deep if this is really the case, or might be only that situation, right? But also on LinkedIn, I also go to LinkedIn and try to look for the people around. I search, for example, product manager across the organization, and I try to start screening a little bit. And when I see too many male, it feels for me that the company doesn't care about, is not incentivizing that, and it might be an environment that I don't feel that comfortable in, because I want to be in an environment that cares about it, that looks for diversity, that wants different thinkings and different perspectives to thrive. So that's a little bit on my point of view, the kind of research that I try to do, and yeah.
I think that's very interesting, and anybody who well, Brian, you're the type of organization that relies on attracting talent and competing. Tell us a bit about your story and how this resonates for you day to day.
Yeah, so look, I think we're a fintech, and the attraction of talent is absolutely the kind of key to our success. So I've kind of seen this from two sides of the coin now. Actually, the NuoPay business was established about 20 years ago, and we probably characterized the chart that you've just shown there in terms of the actual original statistics. About a year ago, we were acquired by a company called EML Payments, which is a 650-person business, and it's just so much more progressed on this front. So the ratios, first of all, it's still a payments business, a fintech. The ratios across the entire organization are 52% female. In the leadership team, it is actually 66% female. And there's been a huge, genuine kind of emphasis on diversity inclusion throughout the organization. So, real kind of genuine actions around employee surveys, and policies that both, I suppose, hopefully attract and retain, kind of diverse talent. So you can see it kind of hitting the actual business performance regularly now.
And how does that? I mean, you're the CEO. You get to see that business form. It's a lot more than just metric. What are the sorts of conversations that your leadership teams have now that might be maybe different than what they could have been in your previous incarnation? Yeah. What are you noticing?
Look, I think when we're a product-centric company, as was just mentioned, and the key to making great products is understanding the kind of the market, your customers, their needs. So the perspectives, the diversity of views that we have around the table makes a massive difference to the quality of the decision making. And look, I also think as well, just tech is such a talent intensive industry. You tap into all these extra pools of talent, with a diverse leadership team. And I think just as Gabrielle just said there, people apply for jobs who probably wouldn't have applied, had they seen the leadership team that we had before, and that's a key competitive advantage, and it's just also, it's a nicer place to work, there's a much more kind of healthy culture. I think there's particularly when you have that kind of diversity, the dialogues become a bit richer and pretty more balanced, and I think that's a winning formula.
And Jackie, as a part of a leadership of an enormous employer in the UK with a lot of responsibility that comes with that, we're also all very citizen-centric, also in the delivery of what you do. As a taxpayer and a citizen here, it's very important that that you have the best people, the best motivated. You've got connect to purpose, and you're doing some amazing things, I believe, to try and broaden the talent pool from the outset.
Yeah, sure. I mean, just resonating with what you said there, Brian, in terms of, for us in government, it's really important that the people that we have building products and services are representative of the people who are using those products and services. And that's the same across fintech and banking. To get a good service out there, you have to understand your use base, don't you? So I think, across government and in DWP in particular, we certainly drive the diversity and equal agenda, and not only through recruitment and trying to, not just on the protected characteristics, but things like diverse social backgrounds, etc., as well, and really trying to bring in that diversity of thinking. And we look at it in different levels in DWP. So our recruitment strategy is very much based on bringing in different levels of people at a senior level, people at a mid-level, and also building talent from the ground up. So bringing in people at apprentice level and really offering a good experience for a multitude of people that offers them flexibility, that offers them career progression, that offers them a really good experience when they come to work for us. So investment in the workspace, a bit of hybrid working, not fully remote, not fully in the office. All of those kinds of things are really important to attracting people in. And when you get them in, then it's around the retention. We found attracting people, and particularly through the apprenticeship schemes, we use existing staff to tell our story, and that's really powerful. There's no better advocate for you as a great place to work as a member of staff talking about what a great place it is to work. So we ask staff who are working for us to tell their story, and we put it out on LinkedIn, and we try and get a diverse range of staff from different race, culture, sexual orientation, age, because the top end of the age bracket can be just as excluded as the young end of the age bracket, yeah? So there is something about us making sure we've got a broad spectrum of society representing us on our public network. And that's really the best advocate that we can have for people applying for jobs. And surely through the apprenticeship scheme in particular, we have currently over 300 engineering apprentices in DWP. 43% of them are female. And that's a huge, huge investment for our future. We're bringing in more apprentices every year. We know that there will come a point where as they complete their apprenticeships, some people will move into other organisations. But investing at that grassroots levels really enables you to invest in people, and that's investing in loyalty as much as diversity. So most of those people will hopefully stay with us. There's good career progression because you're bringing them in at the grassroots levels. Where we bring people in at mid and senior level, again, offering that flexibility. We have loads of network groups. Well-being is really important for us as we've all come out of the pandemic. So offering some of that well-being wrapper, open forums to talk about female and male menopausal symptoms, infertility, people that are going through the same experiences, and creating those network groups for people to tap into and giving them that flexibility and that overall rounded experience of well-being. And we do particularly for women, we have a Women in Digital group, and that Women in Digital group runs various schemes that help women in particular build confidence in public speaking, in writing blogs, and just helping them build, because we do tend to come sometimes a little bit shyer than our male counterparts. Not me. But so we help, and when we run those programs, we provide good female role models and mentors as well. And actually our Women in Digital community is led by our male Director General, Simon McKinnon. It's really important that it's not a divisive male-female. It's about diversity, and it's about that acceptance and that inclusion, and that you have some good sponsors regardless of what sex they identify with.
I love hearing about, call it the DEI agenda at an organisation, personally being led by the top of the organisation. So it's not a project or an initiative, but I also love that you have a male champion for change leading that. It's amazing how many times I have a conversation with someone and they'll say, "Oh, women in APIs, I must introduce you to," and then it's the lady in the organisation who's the one that's driving the agenda. And it's like, it's an everybody conversation. And that's why it's very important for us to have gender balance here today, and hopefully a little bit of age and cultural, because it makes for a more interesting conversation, I think. Otherwise, we all would sit around going, "We've got a problem." I know, we've got the problem. So we've talked about getting people in, and you've talked a little bit about getting people to stay, and people will typically stay if they feel it. In fact, and our wise and savvy and digitally talented millennials and Gen Zs are kind of saying, well, if you're not authentic, because being authentic is very important. You say you've got the value, purpose, and then if it's not being played out at the ground level, what are some of the things we can be doing? What are some of the good things you've seen that make that authentic message feel on a day-to-day basis? It's not the little things, not the big grand gestures, it's often the day-to-day interactions. What does good look like for you, Gabriella?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about my personal experience, right? What I have lived recently. So, for example, Bloomreach, when I joined, at the team that I was in, there was no female other than me when I was hired. So there was a team of like, I think 4 or 5 product managers, and I joined as the first female. But from the interview moments, I was already talking with my manager about that, and I was talking with him, understanding what is his perspective on it. And he felt very open about all of it. So he was willing to talk and said, no, this is important for the company, this is important for the leadership. So
this is a great example of having someone coming into the organization who actually does want, the person, the employing manager is wanting to do something, and by actually inviting people in to help solve that. Now, I think that has to be an everybody conversation, but these little small things about, well, actually, I do want to be an ally, and I do want to help me, what do I need to do to help come across, create an environment that's more successful. Brian, what do you expect from your teams? Maybe some of the people perhaps in the original half of the organization? What do you encourage them to do now that you've seen what different looks like?
Well, I think we probably sometimes I think businesses just take for granted that they're good at this, and actually just a little bit of a shake up on that kind of pretty quickly reveals that maybe there's some really big gaps, because of course you're good at it if the people in your organization feel like you're good at it. Actually, what I think EML does very well is that this is a kind of a genuine kind of agenda item. It's regularly touched on in conversations. It's also something that is, like, back to API terminology, like it's quite agile, right? So we do surveys of how people feel about their experience in this regard, and then changes come off the back of that, right? Because it's really actually out in the wider organization. This is a much bigger business than we had before, so you actually have to kind of engage in quite a structural way. It can't just be water cooler conversations. You need to let people have this, even anonymous feedback forums, so that you can kind of pick up on change.
I think too, if you're in I've worked in very large organizations and worked with people driving usually the gender agenda, but an inclusive position, a story, a maturity in large, complex, traditional organizations. And you find that it is also rather agile. You need to do lots of little experiments. They need to be quite small. And then you're kind of like, oh, that thing's working really well over in that team. Let's propagate some of that. And sometimes you actually need to encourage people. You need to throw quite a lot of seeds out, and they won't all bloom. But if you give people the opportunity to lead the, it could be the Pride event, it could be the accessibility, it actually gives, if there's other aspects of the work that doesn't feel very purpose-driven, giving people an opportunity to lead an angle on the DEI agenda for the organization more broadly can often be really engaging. It's just as long as everybody gets to do it and everybody understands that it's not what McKinsey have done some kind of rather frightening research about these non-promotable tasks. So a lot of people putting effort into this stuff that they feel really strongly about, and often if they feel that it's something that they have a voice and people want to listen to them about, they put a lot of time and effort into it. But the question is, how well is that being recognized and understood sometimes as really important work? Some organizations are very happy to let people put this time in, and I used to work for an organization, we got 2 days volunteer leave every year. We were expected to take it. We were actually, as managers in the teams, were measured on their team's take-up of it. We then create, off the back of that, lots of work about where could people help. And that was, and it was really, really good, really engaging. It built some fantastic relationships in the community and was totally non-judgmental how you used it. But those kinds of things have got to be sort of really lived and breathed and learn.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think that it has to be real, and I think as well it needs to be kind of, showcased. I think people need to kind of hear about it, and that's eventually just kind of compounds over time.
I would love to ask if there's anyone in the audience who would have a question for us about some of these topics. I can see someone put their hand up already. Sorry, Mehdi, I just feel that we want this to be a conversation, don't we?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Just talk like we could hear you. We can play it back if you.
So, I've got to propose a dilemma. So you've got, whether you're a startup that's looking to scale and you've got a limited runway, or you're a big organisation and you have to, achieve value very quickly, the people you bring in immediately have to show value quite quickly.
Yeah.
In some cases, I've suffered this dilemma, which means hiring maybe more junior talent or someone who has the potential, but maybe not had the time frame to do that because they need them to hit the ground running. It's been a real dilemma. Like, how do you balance delivering business return and scaling or whatever it is with talent when you maybe can't find the right seniority?
Yeah. So the question for those made is, how do you balance? And I've certainly heard this from a number of people in rapid scale up. How do I have enough time and capacity when I'm under pressure to be able to deliver very quickly? If I've got, I can't afford to carry a group of people that maybe are still learning on the role. I'd love to ask. I mean, I'm sure Jackie and Brian, both in your different perspectives, will have a view on this.
Sure. So in DWP, we have a number of methods that we can use. So you traditionally have three levers: your time, cost, or quality to pull. And there's something about your longer term investment. So, your short term pain for your long term gain. If you always look to recruit those senior engineers, given the current job market, certainly what we see is, it's like a revolving door for engineers at the minute, isn't it? And you end up paying more and more for new people coming in because the salaries are becoming more and competitive as well. So for me, there's something just about, certainly in our annual budgets, we think about how many people do we need to support our junior staff? And does that mean that I need to supplement the team through perhaps the use of some contingent labour or augmented labour to backfill for the time that I'm spending with the apprentice? So it may be that I will bring in one augmented labour resource for 3 apprentices because of the time that my senior person will spend mentoring the 3 apprentices. Or I can time the work while the apprentices are out at boot camp, so they go out on 12-week boot camps. So it's about...
It's being much more creative, isn't it?
Yeah.
In terms of how you structure roles. It's not... I think that's a great example of...
Yeah.
You've got to think outside the box.
Yeah.
You need a diverse team to come up with some good approaches.
Definitely, yeah.
I would love to hear, Brian, you know startup world.
Yep.
Well,
yeah. So look,
it's obviously a common challenge.
Well, look. So like any organization has pressure to deliver, and I don't see this as something this is not a compromise. I think actually, like, if you can access more diverse talent pools, it's an advantage. You're not compromising on quality. It's actually quite the opposite. You just got a wider kind of group to bring into the business and then hopefully retain people. We certainly you can see that without the right policies, good people leave a business as well. Which is obviously very damaging in most technology companies, given the ramp up and so on. So I think it's a positive for talent and execution.
Yeah, and it starts at the outset. And I believe that venture capital firms and investors, and not let alone the people coming in, are actually now bringing this, more, getting people to do this more quickly. I've certainly had people come and talk to me and say things like, we're really struggling. We have all these open roles and we never get any women apply. And tell me a bit about your business. How many people have you got? Oh, well, we were 25. We're 50 now. We're about. and what's been your diversity talent strategy from the outset? Well, we just got everybody we could onto the, it's like, well, hang on a sec, you've only got 3 or 4 employees at the moment who identify as female. Of course, it is going to be really difficult. So it's got to start from the outset, which is kind of why we need to have conversations like this, I believe. Anybody else have a question? I think we've got time, maybe, haven't we? Got 1 or 2?
Yeah.
One more, particularly?
For 1 or 2?
So if you were to leave the group here with one message, what would it be? Gabriella.
I think that diversity is worth it, and I think it makes a big difference. Like, I'm Brazilian, living in the Netherlands, female, so like, I look for diversity wherever I'm looking for a job. This is important, and I think this makes a big difference, as they were saying, on the result of the product and how you feel at your work, right? If it makes sense for you to be part of that group or not, if you feel included, if this is the right place for you to work or not.
Right.
Yeah, like I'd echo it. I think this is a competitive advantage, and it's also just a nicer place to work. I think you can kind of, first of all, from a kind of just a talent pool point of view, but also just if this kind of team is in an organization, then you do have usually a more kind of constructive, positive environment. And that's the key, right? To driving something that's impactful.
Be a team.
Yeah.
I think for me, it's just take the time to think about it. Don't rush into recruiting the first person you can get. Think about what you're offering and how that offer might attract diversity, not just male, female, but different backgrounds, geographical locations, flexibility in working, all of that sort of stuff. Think about your offering, and if you get that right, your offering is what should attract diversity.
Fantastic. Well, look, thank you, Gabriella, Brian, and Jackie. I'm sure everybody else could join us in thanking them for joining us today. It's been absolutely fantastic to get your insights.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.